on our third lesson of Unit 5, and this lesson is going to help us understand the question of what led to the Enlightenment. So what are the events that led up to it? What is the Enlightenment? I'm not going to read all of this to you, but what is most important that you know in this mini lesson is that the Enlightenment is a period of time, the mid 1600s to the late 1700s in Western Europe, when philosophers and writers applied the scientific idea of reason to answer political questions. The Enlightenment is sometimes known as the Age of Reason. You can also listen to the recording of this to get the full picture. There's two vocab words that will be used in this lesson, vocab terms or phrases that are important for you to know and understand, and that's literacy rates and urbanization. So literacy rates is the percentage of people who are able to read, and urbanization is the process of making an area more city-like, usually through an increase in population. So this is a really good example. This is actually in Shanghai, China. This area is called Pudong. It was farming area in the 1990s, and then in about 20 years' time, this is now what Pudong looks like, and this is like one of the most wealthy areas of Shanghai, China, and it's hustling and bustling. So total urbanization change, and this is a really good example of it. I have linked the 5.1 lesson in here so that you can easily access it if you feel like you need to go back and refresh for any other vocabulary. So you're going to watch this short clip for 1 minute and 22 seconds. This is the transcript, so I haven't recorded myself reading it because you can listen to it in the first 1 minute and 22 seconds. However, thought that it would be helpful for you to also have it to read. And just please be aware of the sources that go with each question. It's in the title of each column. So for question 3, we're going to look at and analyze how absolute monarchs, how the power of absolute monarchs was challenged during the Enlightenment. And let's remember that absolute monarchs are people who had complete power, and they usually got their power through divine right. God, the Catholic Church, usually gave them their power. So, why would during the Enlightenment people maybe start to challenge it? Well, people are now starting to think different ways, and they're not exclusively listening to the Catholic Church. So maybe that's why absolute monarchs, that's why this idea starts to, it's challenged. Moving on to the Protestant Reformation and Scientific Revolution influence. This is something that you thought about in yesterday's lesson, how these two events were similar. And we need to think about the fact that both the Protestant Reformation and Scientific Revolution they were challenging the Catholic Church. So if they're challenging the Catholic Church, people are starting to think differently. And isn't that what this whole time period is about? And here is a textbook definition of the Scientific Revolution that you can use. And then, just thought that this was like a fun GIF for us to think about the Scientific Revolution. I'm trying to be fun here, okay? Okay, moving on. Thinking about increase in books and literacy. Quickly, want to remind you that literacy is the percentage of people who can actually read. So the invention of the printing press is what allowed books to be easily reproduced. It's also what was an important part of Martin Luther being able to spread his ideas during the Protestant Reformation. And more books being made in more languages allowed for more people to be able to read. So more and more people can read, more and more people can rely on themselves to gather information, so more people can start to ask questions. So, that's sort of what the Enlightenment is all about. People are starting to ask questions, and they're starting to think different. So if more people can read, that means more people can start to think different. And this brings us to our last idea of urbanization. So urbanization is people moving to cities and the growth of cities. And this started to happen in Europe. More people were starting to concentrate in these urban city areas, which then allowed for more thinkers to be able to socialize and discuss their ideas. I love that coffee was a newly popular drink in Europe during this time period. So people would go to coffee houses and discuss their political and their religious ideas. So, this is an example of what a coffee house looked like during this time. It's a really large group of people. They're all sort of sitting around. They're having a discussion. And I think it's interesting to compare that to a modern day coffee house because, this is a really nice looking coffee house here. But it's set up for people to be able to sit down and talk. And this might sound funny, but if we think about coffee houses, like I think about, hipsters going to a coffee house and they spread their ideas, they spread their artwork, they spread their writings. And I just use hipsters sort of as an example because there's a lot of coffee houses in Brooklyn. And that's, I just think that might be really relevant. But think about it, a lot of us go and get coffee in the morning and you see people there. You start to form a relationship. You share ideas with them. So this was a way for people to spread ideas and for people to be able to actually talk about those ideas.